Welcome to Ready, Set, Question, a place dedicated to building faith one question at a time. Today's question: what is a worldview? Well, your worldview is the lens you are looking through and determines how you answer the deep questions of life. But you might be saying to yourself, there are so many questions. Well, the deep questions of life can be roped into 5 basic categories. And I came up with this character. He is the number 5, and he has a lasso, and he is roping all of the big questions we have in life into 5 basic categories. So life's deep questions can be summarized as reality. Can truth be known? Origins. How did we get here? Purpose. What is the meaning of life? Evil. What's wrong with the world? Death. What happens when we die? And the first letter of each word spells roped. So I hope this guy can help you remember the 5 basic categories of the deep questions of life. So your worldview determines how you answer these 5 questions. But there are so many worldviews. How do I choose the right one? Believe it or not, there are only 2 worldviews: the biblical worldview and there's the anti-biblical worldview. You see, in 1 John 4, 5, and 6, it says, "They are from the world and therefore speak from the viewpoint of the world, and the world listens to them. We are from God, and whoever knows God listens to us. But whoever is not from God does not listen to us. This is how we recognize the spirit of truth and the spirit of falsehoods." And then Jesus said in John 14:6, "I am the way and the truth and the life." And in John 18:37, he says, "Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." And then in Matthew 12:30, he says that whoever is not with me is against me. And so scripture is clear that there are 2 world views, biblical and anti-biblical. And the biblical worldview is true. But hold on, isn't this just circular reasoning? How can we prove that the Bible is true by using the Bible? This type of reasoning is kind of like blind faith, but being a Christian, blind faith is not required. You see, in 1 John 4:1, he says, "My dear friends, don't believe everything you hear. Carefully weigh and examine what people tell you. Not everyone who talks about God comes from God. There are a lot of lying preachers loose in the world." And the 2 words that I've circled here make a Greek phrase called dokimazo. And it basically means to test, examine, prove, scrutinize, to see whether a thing is genuine or not, such as with metals, to recognize as genuine after examination, to approve, to deem worthy, or to be discerning. Another verse that uses this Greek phrase is Romans 1:28. "Just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind." Now again, I have circled 2 words in this verse, and they both also point back to the previously mentioned Greek phrase dokimazo. And this word, depraved mind, means adokimos, which is also a Greek phrase, very similar to the previous Greek phrase we talked about, but it has an A in the front. So when an A is placed in front of a word or a phrase, it means the opposite. So the definition of adokimos means not standing the test, not approved, that which does not prove itself such as it ought, unfit, unproved, spurious, or reprobate. So going back to Romans 1:28, furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile, dokimazo, to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, adokimos. So the biblical worldview is able to be tested, examined, scrutinized, approved, and deemed worthy. We are called as Christians to not have blind faith. We are called to test, to examine, to scrutinize. So now that we have a clear understanding of what the Bible says, let's put that aside for a second, avoid circular reasoning, and dive into what the world would say are the most common worldviews. There are only 3 worldviews: atheism, Eastern philosophy, and theism. For the sake of this video, I'm going to cross out theism and I'm going to put Christianity. And the reason for that is because there are multiple types of theism. For one example, polytheism, multiple gods, versus monotheism, meaning only one God. If polytheism affirms multiple different types of gods, all of the gods lack the unique characteristics that other gods have that make them unique. In polytheism, all gods, in essence, are gods of lack, which does not correspond to a monotheistic understanding of God. Let's jump into the three monotheistic faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. When it comes to a holy text, prophecy is a major factor in determining if that text is true or not. Judaism and Christianity share the Old Testament, and in the book of Daniel, Daniel prophesies that the Messiah will come before the destruction of the Second Temple, which took place in 70 AD. So therefore, Judaism looks at Daniel as a false prophet because they're still waiting for the Messiah. The holy book of Islam, known as the Quran, was written by one person approximately 600 years after the time of Christ. And in that book, it goes against all historians, whether Christian or non-Christian, in claiming that Jesus was not crucified on a cross and did not die. When it comes to monotheistic faiths, Christianity is the only one that isn't self-contradictory. Well, some people might disagree with this statement and say that Jesus was just a mythical figure. Well, at this point, we must ask ourselves, who is Jesus? I encourage you to go back and watch a previous video that I've created entitled, Who is Jesus? So let's jump back into the three worldviews. Atheism claims the material world is all that exists. Eastern philosophy claims that the immaterial world is all that exists. And Christianity claims that the universe is both material and immaterial. All three are in conflict. Now, the law of non-contradiction basically states that opposing ideas cannot be true simultaneously. So since all three worldviews are in conflict, that means either all three are false or only one worldview is correct. So which worldview is true? Atheism claims the material world to be all that exists, yet space, time, gravity, the laws of logic, and human consciousness are all immaterial. The idea that the material world being all that exists is an immaterial concept, showing the simple act of thinking to refute the core tenet of atheism. Eastern philosophy claims that the material world is an illusion and the immaterial is all that exists. So if the material world is truly an illusion, then all written words, including these, would also be an illusion and would be perceived uniquely by each individual. If all that existed was immaterial, nothing could be known as truth, rendering knowledge worthless. Christianity claims the universe to be both material and immaterial, of which is true because consciousness is immaterial, and these words are understandable. Christianity affirms the material world through the immaterial process of conscious thought, which is the means of discovering truth that can be known by all people, aka science. Which worldview is most logical? Atheism, Eastern philosophy, or Christianity? Well, let's go to Santa Monica College and ask students what they think.
Like there's the physical realm of truth and then there's the otherly realm of truth that metaphysical, yeah, let's go with that. And that one is a little bit more harder to get a consensus on.
Sure.
Yeah.
If everything that we're being told is the truth, I don't think, you know?
Well, I do like the you do you sort of mentality.
Reality, I think, is just one of those things that you can't, well, thanks to, you know, the Matrix films, you can't necessarily prove it, but, you know.
I feel like there's a lot of lies pretending to be the truth.
It can be pretty agreed upon, like don't go kill people, don't go steal things.
I would argue that there are like hard factual truths in this world.
I have consciousness. I hope that you're real and that everyone else around me is real.
How to measure that? That's where it gets really difficult.
Just tell me the truth! Probably for Earth, we just got really lucky. Maybe there was like a million other chances for Earth to happen and one thing went wrong and then now it's like we can't have plants and then that never kicked off.
It just doesn't make sense how we're just all here randomly.
I don't know how to answer that, but I believe it was God.
the provability is very suspect. It's more just like faith and belief, either in science or in some religion. So
Gonna tick off a lot of evolutionists.
You know, I wasn't there originally, but I just have to assume, creation happens.
You know, it's funny. Like I know people that think that the only way they feel good about the universe existing is if it was created by someone.
Some people bring up God, and other people bring up like cells or something. I don't know.
And I always like to think of it like scientifically, like the Big Bang and everything, and how like we evolved from this. I forgot the name of it. Somewhat human to fully human people.
Personally, for me, I am Christian, so I do believe in a God, and I do believe that He made everything around us. How He made that everything, that I'm not entirely sure of.
I do believe in the Big Bang and evolution.
Other believers who think that it's possible that God started the evolutionary process.
I like science. I think it's cool. However, I don't know. I think all of it also might be in the same way a reflection of something larger than that.
I see everything. I see how complex it is. I see how beautiful it is, and I'm just like, something had to light the match, right?
I don't know yet, but I think I'll figure it out in a couple years.
Hey man, it's all about just, you gotta find something that you really like or something that fulfills you, and then just keep going with that. Like for some people, they like money. Other people, they like to spend time with people, You just gotta find something like that.
Yeah, what he said, I guess.
Mostly right now, it's just what you make of it. You find your own purpose. Maybe it's to have kids and make them go on to do something greater, or, anything that you can think of.
Some people have different reasons, such as sometimes they mostly value money or they value family, and I feel like it's very different to people.
A lot of people in the world have different visions of where they want it to go, and those visions are not reconcilable with each other.
It's been proven psychologically that we have a negative bias.
And if you're shooting for a utopia, there can't be those two utopias at the same time.
So the things that happen that are negative, we think of them as greater than, or they happen greater, and they are greater than maybe some of the good things that happen in our life.
They happen more often, you mean?
Yeah. There's definitely a baseline to your life, and it can't always be great, and it can't always be terrible.
The only thing that separates us from animals is laws, and if we didn't have laws, this world could be a disaster.
Everything is random in this world, and so there's a chance for good things to happen, there's a chance for bad things to happen. I don't know if we can necessarily figure out what that percentage is.
I don't know, honestly. That's scary, I guess, but I am curious.
Me, my biggest hope is that I can leave something behind.
If you're if you were bad but you were good, you would probably go in between or something. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Let's say if I die and this is the end of my journey on this earth, then I'm gone. That's it. But if my journey isn't done, then I'll go on to another life.
Life finds a way, I guess. If we eventually die off and it's not humans who rule the earth, maybe it'll be lions or something. Maybe another primate will step up to the plate and evolve and become bipedal like us, and then all that.
What does happen? I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not dead.
I don't have any empirical data.
Yeah. There's no, and I don't think that you can get any empirical data on that because.
Sure. Some people seem to be uncertain or confused when answering the deep questions of life, while others seem to cherry-pick pieces from other worldviews when creating their own personal worldview. And much like a puzzle, each worldview has a unique whole picture. Each piece fits with the piece of the same picture. Forcing different puzzle pieces together assembles an incoherent picture. Similarly, when it comes to life's deep questions, the only coherent answers come from one consistent worldview. So remember, all the deep questions of life can be roped into 5 basic categories: reality, origins, purpose, evil, and death. So how does atheism answer life's deep questions? Reality: can truth be known? No, truth cannot be known because it is an immaterial concept that requires the immaterial tools of reason, logic, and observation. Knowledge of truth can only be acquired through human consciousness, which is immaterial. Now, when it comes to reality and truth, Christianity says yes. The Bible claims that we can know the truth, and the truth will set us free. How does atheism answer life's deep question when it comes to origins? Like, how did we get here? Evolution, of course. There was nothing until the Big Bang. Then, over billions of years, in the absence of goals and purpose, everything in the universe formed. Life began in a primordial soup of which evolved into all the species we see today. Christianity says that God purposely and intentionally formed us in His image. How does atheism answer life's deep question in regard to purpose? Like, what is the meaning of life? Survival of the fittest. Stay alive long enough to pass on your DNA. Hopefully you did something important enough for future generations to remember you. Christianity says that our purpose in life is to grow in the likeness of Jesus and to invite others into God's eternal family. How does atheism answer life's deep question when it comes to evil? Like, what's wrong with the world? There's nothing wrong with the world. There is only a struggle for resources within an organism's biological niche. Evolution progresses while some species thrive and others go extinct. Christianity claims that a perfect world was created for us, but we chose and we still choose our own way that causes pain and suffering. Also, our choices messed up the planet, and we're still messing up the planet. How does atheism answer life's deep question when it comes to death? Like, what happens when we die? We cease to be alive and our bodies decay. Christianity states that we either spend eternity with God or without Him, otherwise known as heaven or hell. Atheism and Christianity are opposing ideas. And remember, the law of non-contradiction states that opposing ideas cannot be true simultaneously. There are only 2 worldviews: biblical and anti-biblical. John 18:37, Jesus said, "Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." And in John 14:6, He says, "I am the way and the truth and the life." You see, everything the Bible says about Jesus is true, and we can use our immaterial consciousness to observe, test, replicate, and verify what we see in the material world. And the Bible confirms that. But you might be saying to yourself, isn't the Bible just a bunch of mythology? Well, I'm glad you asked. Feel free to go back and watch a previous video that I created called "Can We Trust the Authenticity of the Bible?", where I use these 5 characters to help us remember why we can trust the Bible. As followers of Christ, we have a confident hope that has been reasonably investigated, that gets stronger when tested. And that spells Christ. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Ready, Set, Question, a place dedicated to building faith one question at a time. Well, here's a question for you. How do you answer the deep questions of life? If you'd like to learn more about other topics that I have covered, please visit my website at readysetquestion.com, and a special thanks to bensound.com for providing the music. Much love and Godspeed.